All right, we're continuing on with this lesson using our My Album DB database that we just created. So you should have a database now in your MySQL server. Also, what you should have, let me share my screen. There we go. You should also have, uh, you should have done the band table and label table as well. So this is what I have. I just use essentially the same constraints. So band ID uh, has a data type of small int unsigned, auto increment not null, and band is one of the fields, varchar 60. I'm setting band ID to be the primary key, and then label ID, small int, unsigned, auto increment not null. The label field with the varchar 40, and a constraint setting label ID as the primary key. So that's what we are. We have our artist table, our band table, and our label table built out. And that is, let me go back here. That is these three tables here. They are built. Now that we've built those, we can now build out the album table. So let's start working on that. So here's the code for the album table. We're gonna go back and forth talking between, and then we'll discuss what's happening in the slides. So you can pause the video right here if you need to get this information, or just toggle back and forth. Or you can come over here, Visual Studio Code, and you can, uh, after I typed it out, you can pause the video and then enter the information there, however you do it, whatever works for you. So we're going to create a table. This table is album. Don't forget your semicolon at the end of the statement again. All right, the first field is album ID. We're gonna make that small int. Again, unsigned, auto increment, and not null. Next, we have the title. I say varchar 40. Uh, I think 40 should be enough. You know, you may, I don't know, 50. I looked at, the longest album title. No, that was for movies. Somebody did an album title, a movie title, just really obnoxiously long, but not worried about that. So I just said 40. Now here, artist ID. Okay, so this artist ID is going to point to the artist ID here. So this information needs to be the same. We need to say small int unsigned not null. We don't say auto increment, okay? But small int unsigned and not null, because this artist ID is pointing to this one here. That information needs to be the same. So small int unsigned and not null. Again, we're just leaving out auto increment. And then band ID. Band ID. Again, same thing. Small int, unsigned, and not null. And label ID. Label underscore ID. Small int, unsigned, and not null. Let's add a year. So year, released, and year. So year underscore released, and the data type will be year. And then date created. We want to add a timestamp for this. This is just saying, hey, when was this entry added to the database? So date created will be timestamp, and then default current timestamp. We'll talk about what this means in a minute. And we will also want to add something just in case it's been updated. So we'll say last update. And it's going to say timestamp, default current timestamp. On update, current underscore timestamp. And put a comma there. And now we need to add our constraints. So the first constraint is going to set the primary key. So PK underscore album. Thank you. Primary key. Primary key is album underscore ID. Now we're going to add some new ones, some new constraints. We haven't seen these yet. Constraint FK. I think this will be artist. Yep. And this is going to be a foreign key. What does that mean? Artist underscore ID. I'm going to say references artist underscore ID. Oh. Constraint FK band foreign key band underscore ID references band underscore ID. Constraint FK label foreign key label underscore ID references label underscore ID. And before we copy this and paste it over, let's talk about what all of this means. Okay, so pause the video now if you need to get all of this code, and then start it back up so we can talk about what's happening here. So first thing we do is we assign the album ID in the same way as the previous tables. Then we add the artist ID, band ID, and label ID. And as I stated, because the columns are going to reference a column in another table, then the data type and constraints need to be the same. In other words, that small int, unsigned, not null, that needs to be the same. Then we have the date created column, and it has a timestamp data type. And we need to set the default to current timestamp. This allows MySQL to determine the time at the instance the data is entered. Also, any updates to the entity will be automatically timestamped once the data is entered. Meaning, when we fill out a row of data, we hit enter, send it up, we send it to the database, and it gets stamped the date and time that this data was entered. And any update that we make to that data, we will see that we'll have an updated, we have a field for update, last update, that will track and say, hey, this is when this update was last made. And if we were working on, say, a larger system with the team, We could also have, credentials such as, who in admin made this update. So there'd be a field there to say, okay, hey, Satch made this update, or Josh made it, or Mary made it. It would be a field in the same way because you want to keep track of that information. We add a constraint making album ID our primary key. Finally, we create foreign keys. Foreign keys are keys that reference other tables. By creating foreign keys, one table can have access to the data from another table. That's important because, again, we're talking about relational databases. So these tables are not separate from each other, they're connected. And we know that these tables are connected in this instance by the artist ID, the band ID, and the label ID. So creating a foreign key says, hey, this this key here, artist ID, which is right here, is a foreign key, and it references the artist table, artist ID field. That's how those tables are connected. So you want to go through, give this a look, check your spelling, um, check your syntax. Make sure that at the end of each one of these statements or clauses, you have a comma that separates them. Again, make sure you have a semicolon at the end of that statement. I'm going to copy this, bring this back over here to my server, hit enter, and it looks good. Query OK, 0 rows affected. If you have an error, read the error. It will tell you what line the error was made, and it'll say near something. It usually could be, you uh, don't have a comma at the end of one of the statements. It could be one of your keywords is misspelled. It could be something like that. Maybe use a semicolon or a period instead of a comma. Any one of those things that could cause an error. Okay. Also, if your foreign keys are not corrected, if they're not correct, then you'll get an error there as well. So this is why, again, we have to set up these smaller tables first, these subtables, before we get to album, because album has foreign keys that point to a key from another table.
It's saying that table label already exists.
So that must mean that excuse me, woo-wee, maybe that you try to do label twice.
Oh, I may have copied it.
Yeah. So as you can probably see, we needed to create the artist, band, and label tables first in order to bring the data over to the album table. Now let's fix an issue that you might not have noticed. Anybody see any kind of issue, perhaps? Yes, no. I'm sorry. We didn't use the table. Yeah, I mean, there's an issue. Let's see. Uh, it's good to always include a timestamp for each table to notate when the entity was created as well as when it's updated. And we'll need to make a change to the artist, band, and label tables to add a date created and last update columns. So we added the date created and last update for our album table, but we didn't do it for our other three tables. So that's the issue right there. So let's fix that. We've already built the table, but now we need to see how can we make a change to the table after it's been built. This will happen quite a bit. Sometimes you'll build out a table. Maybe you forget a field. 1 second. Maybe you'll forget a field, and in which case you have to go back and add that field. Uh, or maybe you misspelled a field. Or it could be anything. Maybe just down the line, you just want to add something, another field to the database that would provide more information or make your data more robust. So here's how we do it. Yes, Will. Oh, you have to make sure you use. So you need to say, yeah, good point. If you leave the database and you start it back up, you got to make sure you're using the correct database. So you want to say use and then the name of your database. So in this case, use my album DB, and don't forget your semicolon. All right. So to alter the table, to make a change to the actual table, we use the alter table add statement, and this is how it looks. Nope. Alter table, and then whatever the table name is, and then we're going to add the column, the data type, and the constraint, much like we've already done. So again, this is part of the schema. We're making an update to the actual schema. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So alter table artist. So this is all going in the schema file. So I'm going to say alter table artist. I like to put these on separate lines and tab it over like so. We're going to add, what are we going to add? We're going to add date created. Okay. And it's going to be time stamp default current underscore time stamp. And then we're also going to say add last update time stamp default current underscore time stamp on update current underscore time stamp. And then don't forget your semicolon at the end. Just like so. And before I do band and label, I'm going to copy this and paste it inside my server. Good. It says query okay, 0 rows affected, records, duplicates, warnings, all at 0. So good to go. So now that I got that, I can do the other ones. Excuse me. I'm just going to make this real simple. I'm just going to copy it, paste it, and then change this to band and change the next one to label. Since the information is the same, they have the same name fields. No changes there. So I can just copy those two and paste them. We're looking good. You can pause the video if you need to and get all of these. And then again, paste them inside your server. So again, this is why I like to write everything inside of my code editor to help keep track of how I built my schema. Okay, and any updates or anything that I need to make, I have it there. Matter of fact, it creates a template for me should I want to add more tables. If I want to add a table for executive producers, or whatever else I want to add on there, then I have a structure, a template that I can use that's already in place, so I don't have to go and think too much on what I need to do. All right. Once you've typed all those statements and copied them and pasted them into your MySQL server, you should be complete or should have completed. Ooh, my grammar. You should be completed with those tables. We'll revisit the schema later. In the MySQL server, type the command show tables. So just like we type show databases, and that shows the databases that we have on the server, we can also type show tables. So I'm still using my MyAlbumDB database. So I can say not do, but show tables, semicolon, and there I have my 4 tables listed. Right on. And you can see the tables are listed alphabetically. We are good to go. We're looking good. Now let's type this command. DEC album. Let's see what happens. DESC album, semicolon. And what do we have here? I'm gonna stretch this out as much as I can, just so we can kind of see what's going on here. The DESC command or description or describe displays a description of the table selected. Here we see a description of the album table. If we look at it, the column headings detail the field, type, null, key, default, and extra columns. This is very useful information to understand how each table is built. So when we look at this, we see the field, each one of the fields that we created for album ID, title, artist ID, so on and so forth. We see the type, so it gives the data type for each one of these fields. It answers the Boolean, can this be null or not? And we see that album ID, artist ID, band ID, and label ID, those values cannot be null. Title, year released, date created, last update, those can be null. Key, we have so our primary key was the album ID. Artist ID, band ID, label ID, those are foreign keys or multi keys, whatever. Default, does it have a default value? They're all null unless it's the current timestamp. And then any extra information like auto increment, default generated, etc. So this gives us information on the album table. So we could do that with others if we want to, describe band. And there it gives us information on the band table. All right, so the DESC command is how we can describe the table. So it helps us to see what the tables look like, what kind of data goes into each one of these tables or these fields, and any other information regarding the table. So we'll pause the video here. Let's go. If you need to, go back and check on anything that you have. Make sure that everything's cleaned up, looking nice. And then after that, we're going to come back and we're going to actually look into using the data SQL file and actually inserting data into the database. So we'll do that on the next video. We're going to pause it here. See you next video.